Hey everybody, this is July 10th, 2009. I'm Sonic Suns, and I'm here to talk about a guy that I generally like, except for the stuff he does that I don't like. Mr. Barack Obama, whom I've, actually mentioned a few times. I voted for him. He was a great step up after 8 years of George Bush. Except in a couple of areas where things aren't stepping up half as fast as they ought to. And it worries me. And it all comes down to alleged terrorists. And alleged supporters of terrorists, and alleged everything, and alleged things. Please keep that in mind. I believe it was Edward R. Murrow, great journalist, who pointed out during the era of McCarthyism that allegation is not proof. That, you have to find proof of things. I feel like I'm telling people, the earth is round or something here. Very basic stuff. Let me explain how things work, or how they ought to work. Someone is accused of a crime. For instance, terrorism, or in fact any crime. Things could be a little different depending on what you're dealing with, but I'm talking about the very general ideas, which ought to apply to basically anything. You're accused of a crime, right? First, there has to be sufficient reason to, let's say, arrest you. You can't just point at someone on the street like, that guy committed a crime, officer, go arrest him. No. Maybe if the officer saw him do something, or if there's a couple different witnesses aside from just you just pointing out random people you don't like, all of those people, they're all criminals, take them away. No. There has to be some sort of reason, right, to arrest a person. And then if you take them to a cell or something at the police station, you have to have a reason to keep them there. Alright? Maybe the officer files a report saying, okay, I saw this person do a thing, and you have a couple of witnesses, and we're getting information or whatever. And if it turns out like you have the wrong guy, for instance, there was a mix-up, or, if it turns out no crime was committed, there was an error, or in fact just plain old corruption on someone's part, the guy gets to go free. In fact, half the time you get to have some degree of freedom anyway. You don't just stay in jail, say, forever. There's things like bail, for instance. Like, okay, you can go free, but you have to come back for your trial, things like that. And then there are various restrictions on different sorts of people and alleged criminality and such. If you go on trial for vandalism or something, most likely you can get out and we'll bring you back in. If you're on trial, though, for, rampaging through a mall and shooting people and stuff, we're going to probably keep you in jail. It's a very high risk of letting you out to anywhere. But we have to have a reason for keeping you in jail, You have to present that to some sort of somebody, right? And then we have to figure we're going to trial. For the office, and there's a grand jury or some sort of preliminary procedure. Make sure, do we have evidence? We have evidence? Okay, cool. Then we go to the actual trial. This is the key point. Where you have the defendant who's been accused of a crime, and you have whomever thinks the defendant committed a crime, probably the government, the cops and so forth who arrested him, someone like that. And then you have an impartial somebody or other, like judge and jury and something like that. Someone who's not part of any of this, right? The whole idea of a judge is someone whose job does not depend on this guy being made guilty, because it's the cop's job to find, criminals, or the anti-terrorism agent's job to find terrorists, things like that. And that can lead to trouble. That can lead to nabbing people who aren't actually criminals. And maybe the case of direct deception and just, okay, pretend this guy's a criminal so I can, look good, and look, I caught this criminal. But, it doesn't have to be deception per se. There can also be just, interior bias that the person doesn't even realize. I mean, when you're looking for criminals, or you're looking for terrorists, particularly terrorists when you know what terrorists can do, and you want to find a terrorist, and that's what you do, that's your job, you might be inclined to think that each person you're suspicious of must be a terrorist. Because that's all you're thinking of. This terror, I gotta get the terror, I gotta stop them before they do something. And, you know, the whole point of the judge and jury or whatnot sort of thing is to have someone else step back, have a judge, for instance, who's not paid, you know, to catch as many criminals or terrorists as possible. He's paid to make proper decisions, or there may be a jury. And they're not even paid at all, or, you know, they're not. This isn't their day job, being a jury. You get selected from the population, which is, you know, another buffer against possibilities of corruption and bias and so forth. Right? So then we take you into the trial, and, you know, everyone presents evidence and so forth, and then we make a decision. And then even then, if you're convicted, there can be an appeals process, there can be... This is what you do, because you want to put the guilty people in jail, or whatnot, whatever penalty they serve, and you want the innocent people to go free and say, hey, sorry that we accuse you and put you through all this crap thus far, but at least we give you your freedom now, because it turns out you're innocent. Very simple concept, right? You don't just pick people. You're a terrorist. Jail. You have to have a reason. And look, I understand you know, a variety of accentuating circumstances. For instance, you know, if there's some terrorists or whatever in a war zone, maybe they have that guns and they're shooting at the troops or whatever, and we're shooting back, and maybe we capture some guy at some point. Like, we don't necessarily have time to read him his Miranda rights right now, because there are bullets flying through the air. You know, there are bullets. Oh, okay. I understand. Everyone understands these certain situations. Furthermore, back on a domestic side, it doesn't have to be terrorism per se, but if there's, you know, there's just some nutcase with a gun in a mall or whatever, we don't fill out a form or something. No, we take him down first, and maybe he gets killed, or, you know, in this case, I presume the guy gets captured. Or girl, or whatever. I'm trying to be sexist. You know, okay, we understand various things like that. You know, or for search and seizures. If you have to go in someone's house, you knock on the door, say, hey, we have a warrant, we get to look at such and such stuff in your house, we get to search the house, something like that. And sometimes you get a high-risk warrant, I think they call it, which means, like, okay, the guy inside there has, you know, a rocket launcher or something, so we can't actually just knock on the door, we would die. But, you know, we're going to come through the window, and we're going to, you know... But to do that, you need a higher standard of proof, right? You can't just presume these things. You can't just do what the frick you want on the presumption that you're always right. It comes down to that. The fact that you, Mr. Whoever, you know, was trying to find criminals or terrorists, the fact that you might be wrong. The government might be wrong. And I've been perplexed for years at so many people with such high, you know, media profile and everything too, not just some guy on the internet or whatever. No, so many people that seem to think that each and every person accused of terrorism is in fact a terrorist. Every time. Every time. Like, we couldn't possibly screw this up. Particularly when we're not giving them trials. The whole point of the trial was to find out whether the guy's innocent or guilty. People are saying that, like, you know, there's certain detainees in Guantanamo Bay. And sometimes we find a guy's innocent, because, like, you know, we got some other dude that has a similar name, and, oh, he screwed it up, but the intel was bad. Sometimes, like, you know, you're offering up, like, rewards or something. Hey, you know, we'll give out money or support or something for anyone who can tell us if there are terrorists nearby. And sometimes a guy games the system. You know, some random dude, whatever, you know, foreign land or something. Because most of the time we're looking for terrorists in foreign lands. But they could be domestic. Anyway, sometimes some random dude just be like, oh, yeah, that guy Bob, he's a terrorist. And just makes it up and, you know, pockets some money or whatever, you know, curries some favor. And then, like, you know, leaves the scene or something, and meanwhile we grab Bob, who's not a terrorist at all, it's just some other dude that hated him, which is like my previous example, just pointing a guy in the street, hey, that guy, he's a criminal. Like, do you have a reason to believe that, or what?